guys. So you may or may not have seen Michaela's and I's betwixt review on The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and you may or may not have heard that I was going to do a series review with a potentially unpopular opinion. I say this because a lot of the people that I talked to really love this series, and if you saw our review of this, while we had our issues with it, I also really loved this book. And then, as I said, I read the other two, and then I had more opinions. So we're going to talk about those other opinions today. I don't want to rehash too much of what we went over in our review of The Cruel Prince, but just to hit on the highlights. I really love Jude as the main character. She is a human who watched her parents get murdered 10 years ago and then was stolen away to Fairy with her twin sister and her older sister Vivi by the dude who did the murdering, because he's actually Vivi's dad, and raised like his daughters, which I'm sure is just like a psychological trip in and of itself. Jude is raised to be bloodthirsty, she's raised to be ruthless and cunning, and she is proud about that about herself. And I love that in a main character. I feel like a lot of time in YA, the main character is supposed to be like the moral compass bit, and that's not a bad thing, but it does get stale, and Jude is not that. And that was really refreshing. She also wasn't, Vivi. I feel like oftentimes Vivi would have been the main character. Vivi is not. Vivi is actually very not present. She's just like, I'm gonna go do my thing. And Jude and Taryn are like, we're gonna try to not get murdered today by all the fairies who hate us. Thanks, Vivi. This book also sets up a love interest for Jude named Carden. He is a fairy prince, and as we discussed in that review I keep mentioning, there are some issues with that because Carden is a jerk to her who secretly likes her. I absolutely hate the, oh, if he's mean to you, he must really love you. If he's mean to you, he is not worth your time. Thank you, next. Bye-bye. I mentioned in our review of this, though I did not say it, that I was really pumped by the ending of The Cruel Prince, and the reason is because at the end of The Cruel Prince, instead of Jude and Carden taking the throne and her controlling him via the power of her love or whatever, she makes Carden agree to a fairy pact, which essentially says that he has to do whatever she says for the next year and a day. And I was like, yes, Jude, yes. Even though y'all have made out and it's clear that, you kind of want to take each other's clothes off, that doesn't mean anything. You get that fairy pact in. So I was very pumped about that, very pumped for what that would mean for the next book and this continuing use of the gray area. And I wouldn't necessarily call her an anti-hero, but it's her moral compass is very gray. So I was very excited for her to be able to take the power behind the throne and to have that kind of control of Carden. So I thought, oh, the Wicked King's gonna be great. The Wicked King was not great. I want to read you something really fast. Jude, this is the inside flap of the Wicked King, okay? Jude has bound the Wicked King Carden to her and made herself the power behind the throne. Navigating the constantly shifting political alliances of Fairy would be difficult enough if Carden were biddable, but he does everything in his power to humiliate and undermine her, even as his fascination with her remains undiminished. Okay, first of all, that goes back to that issue. Second of all, does everything in his power to humiliate and undermine her. I was expecting so much more conflict between Carden and Jude in this book, and it really doesn't happen. The most humiliating thing that happens to Jude happens at the hand of Locke, who recognizes that Carden has feelings for Jude and puts them into this really awkward situation, which ends up leading to them getting naked for the first time, although it seems to be trying to make it clear that they took their clothes off, but they didn't like totally have sex. It's very obtuse in that way that young adult novels are. And so I'm just like, that's the most humiliating thing that happens, and it leads to them rounding another base. Like, what? Carden really does not want to be a king, and the reasons why become clear a little bit later, but that conflict really wasn't there. What was more there and was more interesting is that Jude is running herself ragged. I feel like sometimes you get these characters who like ascend the throne at a young age, or surprise they're a princess or something. You know, they magically are just really, really good at leading people and ruling the kingdom, and you know, they have their issues, but everything turns out fine. Jude is having some time. She has stopped eating, she has stopped sleeping, and she's just going, I think I underestimated what this would be actually like. And I really did enjoy the reality of that, because that seemed far more likely than I'm just the best, which Jude is a little bit of, but you know, she has reasons. So after the end of The Cruel Prince, there is an issue between the Undersea, which is like a kingdom of Selkie fairies, and the kingdom ruled now by Carden. And Balakin is still alive. That's, you know, Carden's brother who murdered the rest of their siblings. How rude of him. And there's some political intrigue going on, and this is again building into Jude's arc of her being like, you know, I know how to kill people really well, but now I'm in a room where everybody's politicking, and I've just realized that I actually would rather be back in the shadows. Please leave me in the shadows. Please, Carden, do something. Of course, naturally, Carden, when he chooses to show up for work, is a natural leader, and Jude is like, oh, maybe I do like you, except that I hate you. Ugh, ugh, ugh. The issue with this book really for me coalesces around the last third. Jude ends up captured by the Undersea, and she is brought under the waves and tortured, essentially. They think that they can control her because they can glamour her. They can't, because Prince Dane in The Cruel Prince put a guise on her, which is essentially just used as a deus ex machina for the rest of the series, because now she can't be controlled. And so they think that they can control her. They can't. She's just trying to survive it. But I mean, it's terrible. They have totally dehydrated her. She has no food. She's getting totally, you know, in salt water. So she's literally just like pruning and husking. It's not pretty. Carden eventually makes a deal that makes Balakin the ambassador to the Undersea, which makes some other people really upset, but he gets Jude back. And there's like a brief conversation where somebody says, oh, Jude, you came out stronger from the Undersea when you went in. And this is very important to Jude, that people recognize that she's survived this. However, literally 5 seconds later, Carden tricks her, essentially, into releasing him from his vow to be controlled by her in exchange for marrying her and making her the Queen of Fairy. And her explanation for that later is, oh, well, I was so exhausted by being tortured in the Undersea that I was just so weak and weak-willed that I just totally let that slip by me. What? You cannot eat both of the pieces of this pie. You cannot be trying to say that Jude came out stronger, smarter for like 5 seconds and then tear that all apart by her making a very telegraphed mistake. Because what did you think was going to happen when you let Carden loose? Because it's also not like they have spent a ton of time falling in love together. Like, their scenes together are really infinitesimal. Like, you do not watch them fall in love as far as I am concerned. You just watch them have lusty feelings while continuing to say, I hate you, which is a trope. I understand this, but all of a sudden to propose marriage, to trick her into this, it just felt like Jude was being betrayed by the plot after all this time we spent with her, to be honest. So this also had, like, the pacing of this one just felt funky, the plot felt off, and at the end of it, Jude is in exile. Cardan has sent her into exile because, oh yeah, she kills Balakin. P.S. So he sends her into exile at the behest of the Undersea to make peace. And she's like, you can't do that because I'm the queen. And though Cardan can't lie, he also tricked her into marrying him in secret. No one was there but the two of them. Like, Jude knows better. Jude knows better. Jude has been running a country. Jude knows better. So that's how this one ends. And I'm pretty sure I put this one down and I went, oh God, am I even gonna read the last one? But the thing is that The Cruel Prince was so good and had so much promise that I was like, okay, I know Holly Black is amazing. This story seems really good. I believe in redemption. Let's read The Queen of Nothing. Storygraph, when you are asked to review, says, is this book character or plot driven? And I want another option that says author driven. Like, this feels like you're on a bumpy road and you're like, ba-dunk, 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 and the bumps are so bumpy, they actually send you down like 4 separate roads. Like, what is happening in this book? Also, so let me back up. Let me try to be good about this. So this book starts with Jude has become a bounty hunter in the human world because what else is she going to do? All she knows how to do is murder people. And then Taryn shows up and she's like, hey, I need you to go back to Fairy and pretend to be me. Because Taryn, who in the second book married Locke, the guy who tricked her into doing gross things with Jude in the first book, yet Taryn got sick of him and murdered him. So there's going to be an inquest, and Jude, because she has been doused with the geese that says that she can't be glamored, can lie. Taryn can't lie. She done killed him in the study with a letter opener. So Jude says yes, because she all of a sudden desperately misses Cardan, who sent her into exile, but she married him. Again, they needed more space to prove to me they were actually in love. This book is trying to tell me they are. I don't believe it. I haven't seen it. So anyway, she goes back and I'm like, oh, all right. So this is going to be, she goes back to court. She's pretending to be Taryn. That's awesome. Cool. How soon is Cardan going to notice? Is it going to, like, you know, but then literally the day of the inquest, she sees Cardan for like 5 seconds and then her pretend fairy dad swoops in and saves her at the last minute and like abducts her from the castle. Did I mention that her father turned traitor at the end of the last book? That also happened. So anyway, he's escaped with half of Cardan's army and he is like, I have to save Taryn. So he swoops in and saves her. And then she's performing, you know, identity theft with her father, who somehow doesn't notice that she is Jude for a very long time. And then she's like, well, I can't be here. I need to get back to Cardan because I've learned all of these things about the enemy's plan. And then all of a sudden, Cardan shows up to save her. And she's like, oh, awesome, cool. But then somebody else gets poisoned and Cardan has to run away with them and she is not saved. And then Taryn and Vivi come to save Jude. And then they all run away and back to the court. And I'm like, okay, now what is happening? They're all there. The identity theft is off. Cardan is saying he never meant to exile Jude. Really, it was all a trick and Jude's just dumb and didn't notice. And I'm like, Jude is better than this. Jude is better than this. And then Cardan renounces the crown, breaks it in half, and turns into a serpent. Guys. I don't even know. I don't even know what happened in this book, and then I read the entire thing. I just described it to you. Do you know what's happening? I don't know what's happening. So everything I thought was going to happen once again didn't happen. Everything that had been set up and seemed to have a lot of potential didn't happen. And I mean, it was a roller coaster ride. These two plots were very telegraphed, and I certainly didn't have Carden transforms into a giant serpent on my bingo card, but here we are. So, I describe this series this way. It's as if someone was building a house, and they had these beautiful blueprints, and they had these beautiful plans, and they began to build it. And they put up, when you build a house, right, you have to build the frame first, and it's a beautiful structure, and you can see between the plans and the frame, you can see how beautiful this house is going to be. But then after the construction crew finishes putting just the last structure beam up, they leave and they say they're done. And you're like, but there was a beautiful house that you were supposed to build. And they said, nope, this is it. This series had the structure, the bones, the frame, whatever you want to call it, to be amazing. Holly Black is an amazing writer. All of the pieces are there. But you don't get to really see Jude and Carden together and believe in their romance. Jude is set up to be incredibly smart and vicious and ruthless, but at key points, Jude's just like, oh, I guess I didn't notice. What? She can't be the smartest person in the room until she needs to be, and then she isn't. Nope. And then I don't even know what's going on in the plot of the last one. I appreciate that it tried to be inventive, but a lot of things just went weird. So, again, there are a lot of people that really love this series, and I can absolutely see why. I can see the frame of that house, and I want to love it. I want all of these books to be 500 pages. I want to see it. I want to get it. I want more, but it isn't there. And I have to do this review based on what's there. And unfortunately, the promise that I saw in The Cruel Prince, I don't think it ends up living up to that. But again, a lot of people don't agree with me, and I can see why. I can see why a lot of people love it, and I wish that I could be one of them. But at the end of the day, just ended up not being for me. So if you've also read this series, feel free to drop down in the comments, let me know. I understand that most people do, and this isn't an unpopular opinion, but it's my opinion, and it is what it is. So I read 3 books in 3 days. I regret nothing about this, but it is what it is. So again, hit me up in the comments or don't. If you've made it this far, thank you. This was long, but I had feelings, and now you know them. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye.